The files that reopen America's deepest questions, exposing networks of power that spanned continents, drawing Trump and other global names back into focus. As new disclosures test institutions and allies alike, this is the full story behind the Epstein Files.
Hello, you're watching another episode of Explained with me, Krithi Mehta. Today, we are diving into a story that continues to shake political power centers, elite universities, and even royal households across both sides of the Atlantic. The Epstein Files is a broad term for thousands of documents that have surfaced through years of litigation, federal investigations, and now even congressional scrutiny. These files are now revealing deeper and more complicated layers of association around the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. From US President Donald Trump to Prince Andrew, from senior Harvard academics to well-known Indian personalities, Epstein's web of influence is once again in the spotlight. The latest trigger in the case is a fresh batch of internal emails, calendars, and personal correspondence obtained by the US House Oversight Committee in late August this year. These reportedly include never-before-seen communications and even a controversial 50th birthday album compiled for Epstein back in 2003. The notoriously designed album is said to contain signatures, notes, and sketches from several public figures. And like with every release, familiar questions return. Who knew what? Who enabled what? And who helped sustain Epstein's network for so many years? In this episode of Explained, we walk you through the key players, the timeline, and the political fallout now reverberating through the United States, the United Kingdom, and beyond. Let's begin with Jeffrey Epstein himself. Who was he and how did he rise to power and form such a vast and influential network? Jeffrey Epstein was a former teacher turned financier whose plunge into power depended far more on his connections than on any documented investment prowess. He began teaching at Manhattan's Dalton School in the 1970s, where he formed links with families connected to Bear Stearns. He soon joined the firm, climbed quickly, and eventually launched his own wealth management company, J. Epstein and Company, which claimed to work exclusively with billionaires. The now and how Epstein made his money remains largely opaque to this date. Through the 1990s and 2000s, Epstein positioned himself at the heart of elite social circuits, cultivating politicians, royalty, academics, business leaders, artists, and celebrities. His Manhattan townhouse, Palm Beach residence, and private island in the US Virgin Islands became social hubs for high-profile guests. Much of this access was brokered by Ghislaine Maxwell, daughter of media baron Robert Maxwell, who became Epstein's closest associate and, according to prosecutors, who also played a critical role in expanding his network. But behind the facade of philanthropy and elite networking, prosecutors alleged that Epstein ran an organized operation to traffic and sexually exploit underage girls. For years, those allegations were obscured by powerful connections, sealed legal agreements, and veiled financial structures. But how did the Epstein files themselves come together, and what exactly do these documents contain? The term Epstein files does not refer to a single archive. It encompasses multiple sets of documents spanning nearly 2 decades. Now the trail began in 2005 when a 14-year-old girl in Palm Beach reported Epstein for sexual abuse. A police investigation uncovered a broader pattern of underage recruitment at his Florida home. But instead of facing federal charges, Epstein negotiated controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement with the then US Attorney Alexander Acosta. This deal sealed many documents, shielded unnamed co-conspirators, and allowed Epstein to serve just 13 months in a work release program. Much of Epstein's world still remained buried for the next few years. But in 2015, a survivor, Virginia Giuffre, filed a defamation case against Ghislaine Maxwell. That civil suit alone led to partial unsealing of court files, which revealed flight logs, depositions, visitor lists, and details about Epstein's high-profile contacts. Then in July 2019, federal prosecutors in New York reopened the case and charged Epstein with sex trafficking of minors. His arrest promoted new efforts to unseal documents and seize digital evidence. But on August 10 in 2019, Epstein died in federal custody. Although this was officially ruled a suicide, his sudden death fueled more of the US public's long-standing skepticism. Since then, Epstein Files has become a catch-all term for flight logs, seized emails, donation records, unsealed testimony, and materials recovered from Epstein's properties. And now we turn to one of the most politically consequential figures linked to these files, US President Donald Trump. Donald Trump's name has resurfaced repeatedly in the newly released Epstein files, making him one of the most closely scrutinized political figures in this story. Now, if we go back in history, Trump and Epstein first crossed paths in the late 1980s and early 1990s, navigating the same New York and Palm Beach social circles. Epstein too attended several events at Mar-a-Lago, and there are photographs that show the two together at parties in both the cities. In a 2002 New York Magazine interview, Trump described Epstein as, quote, a terrific guy who linked beautiful women on the younger side. However, their relationship later soured. Reports suggest that the two clashed over a Palm Beach property in 2004, after which Epstein was banned from Mar-a-Lago. Trump has repeatedly pointed to this fallout as proof of how he distanced himself long before the allegations became public. But the 2025 congressional release has brought new documents in public eye, including pages from Epstein's 2003 birthday album. One of them contains a sexually suggestive message believed to be from the US president himself. Interestingly, he has not denied writing it, but says it was just, quote, a banter from 2 decades ago. Now, the Oversight Committee's emails also showed Trump's name referenced in early 2000s guest lists and gala coordination. But a thing to note here, none of these communications indicate criminal activity, but they do confirm social overlap longer than Trump has ever actually acknowledged. Now, politically, Trump has embraced a more aggressive stance. During his 2025 election campaign and even later as president, he repeatedly demanded the release of all Epstein-related materials. On the 19th of November, just a few days back, he has also signed a bipartisan bill which orders federal agencies to review sealed Epstein records for public disclosure. His supporters have hailed this move as another attempt to bring transparency into the files, but his opponents have criticized it, calling the move as selective political weaponization. But Trump is far from the only key name. Two individuals who appear very consistently in the new documents are Ghislaine Maxwell and author Michael Wolff. Let's get to them. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell, who is long described as Epstein's closest confidant, plays a central role in the newly released materials. Prosecutors accuse her of grooming and recruiting underage girls, and in her most recent 2025 interview with the US Justice Department, Maxwell has confirmed that she organized Epstein's 2003 birthday album and reached out to his friends acquaintances, and high-profile contacts to contribute their notes and drawings. Many of those messages, now public, raise deeper questions about Epstein's inner circle and Maxwell's role as gatekeeper. Coming to Michael Wolff, he is a journalist known for his best-selling books on Donald Trump. He features prominently in the newly disclosed emails. In one 2015 email, journalist Michael Wolff alerts Jeffrey Epstein that CNN plans to question Donald Trump about their association. In the very email, Wolff urges Epstein to, quote, let him hang himself, suggesting that Trump distancing himself could ultimately benefit Epstein by generating him significant PR and political edge. A subsequent email from January 2019 goes further, with Epstein claiming that Trump, quote, knew about the girls and had briefly contacted Ghislaine Maxwell about them. The allegations are still unverified, but the exchange raises questions about ethical concerns about Wolff's proximity to Epstein and the blurred boundary between journalism influence and private strategic advice. Now, Epstein's web stretches wider than we can imagine. It also includes former US President Bill Clinton, whose past ties with Epstein have returned to public focus with the release of the latest set of documents. One of the most widely discussed items is Clinton's handwritten message in Epstein's 2003 birthday album. The note, now published by the House Oversight Committee, appears under a section titled Friends and reflects personal warmth and familiarity. Now, while the message itself does not suggest wrongdoing, it surely confirms a level of closeness which critics have long debated and stressed over emphatically. Now, Clinton has previously accepted taking flights on Epstein's aircraft in 2002 and 2003 for Clinton Foundation work, but he has vehemently denied ever visiting Epstein's island or knowing about any of his crimes. The new release of documents coincides with a congressional subpoena which requires Clinton to sit for a sworn deposition. Investigators say the focus is transparency and not new allegations, as publicly available records do not implicate Clinton in Epstein's trafficking operation. And just as Clinton faces renewed scrutiny, the latest disclosures have intensified yet another high-profile fallout, this time involving the British royal family. Prince Andrew has long faced public pressure over his relationship with Epstein, and the newly surfaced evidence has worsened that crisis. Just last month, Buckingham Palace announced that Prince Andrew would relinquish his use of royal titles and honours. Then King Charles III issued formal letters patent on the 3rd of November, removing Andrew's entitlement to the style His Royal Highness and also to title Prince. A separate royal warrant further revoked his place on the roll of peerage as Duke of York. Royal sources now say that Andrew will also be vacating his long-time residence at Royal Lodge and instead relocate to a small property on the Sandringham estate, with his living expenses still to be covered by the king. These steps follow renewed demands from US lawmakers for clarity on Andrew's interactions with Epstein and his alleged role in the trafficking network, which are accusations that Andrew strongly denies. But the influence of Epstein's network wasn't confined to politics and royalty. The Epstein files also illuminate deep and troubling connections within elite academia, with Harvard University particularly at the center of recent revelations. Newly released emails show that Larry Summers, who is a former Harvard president and more notably former US Treasury Secretary, remained in regular contact with Epstein between 2013 and 2019. These exchanges included discussions about Harvard-related matters, personal advice, and even romantic issues. In one email, Epstein referred to himself as Summers' wingman. The public backlash has been swift, after which Harvard has reopened a formal investigation into Epstein-linked faculty and donations. Summers has meanwhile stepped away from public commitments and also resigned from several external boards, including OpenAI. He has also left his Harvard teaching duties midway through the semester. Additionally, other prominent academics such as Stephen Coslin and Howard Gardner also appear in Epstein's correspondence. Emails show the coordination of dinners, research discussions, and potential funding dialogues. The fund-related dialogues are said to have taken place even after Epstein was implicated in the 2006 charges and had received a 2008 conviction. Epstein has reportedly donated over $9 million to Harvard across the years. The infamous 2003 birthday album also includes signatures from faculty members including Martin Nowak and former Dean Henry Rozovic. Now, while the Epstein documents primarily involve American and European figures, a few Indian origin names have surfaced, though often with more speculation than substance. One of the most widely discussed is Deepak Chopra. Newly released emails reveal that in 2016, Deepak Chopra asked Jeffrey Epstein whether a woman who had previously accused Donald Trump of sexual assault had also withdrawn allegations she once made against Epstein. Epstein answered briefly and Chopra relied simply, quote, good. But there is no evidence to financial, business or deeper personal ties between the two. Anil Ambani. Indian activist lawyer Prashant Bhushan had earlier claimed on social media that many emails existed between Epstein and Ambani, but crucial point to note here is that none of the publicly released US government documents substantiate this. Major media outlets reviewing the 2025 releases have not listed Ambani's name among confirmed contacts. But at the core of the Epstein files are not celebrity names but survivors. Many survivor depositions describe patterns of grooming, coercion, threats, and psychological trauma spanning years. Majority of them faced harassment for speaking out, and only a fraction have so far received legal redress. Some survivors are now driving public advocacy programs, coordinating efforts to push for the release of all remaining sealed records. They have even prepared a survivor-led client list, which names individuals they allege were involved. The Epstein Files controversy has intensified sharply after the US Justice Department released the first batch of documents last week under the new Epstein Files Transparency Act. Republicans who backed the overwhelmingly bipartisan Epstein Files Transparency Act are now accusing Attorney General Pam Bondi of excessive redactions. They argue that entire names and documents have been scrubbed under broad preliminary claims of investigative sensitivity. Moreover, GOP leaders also warn that they may subpoena other unredacted files if future releases follow the same pattern. Democrats, however, are taking a more cautious position. Senior Judiciary Committee members say that transparency cannot come at the cost of victim privacy or active international investigations. They also warn that reckless disclosure could jeopardize cooperation with foreign agencies and re-traumatize survivors whose identities might appear throughout the files. The White House, for its part, has taken a rather combative tone. Recently, commentators on the American daytime talk show The View questioned the disclosures, indicated they might reveal a great deal about President Trump's historical association with Epstein. In response, the Trump administration dismissed the hosts as, quote, Trump deranged wackos, insisting that the US president supports the releases provided they do not compromise national security or victim protections. It is very clear indeed that the Epstein files are reshaping the conversation about power, secrecy, and responsibility. With the US Congress mandating controlled public release, And with the first batch of documents already out, the pressure on political leaders, universities, and international institutions is higher than ever. But for the survivors, this moment marks a long-fought step towards recognition. As for the public, the next releases will determine whether this process strengthens trust or just exposes how deeply privilege and power insulted the Epstein's network. What unfolds in the coming weeks may define not only the legacy of this case, but also how modern institutions confront wrongdoing at the highest levels. And that's all we have time for this episode of Explained. Stay tuned to NewsX World for more episodes of Global Issues Explained.
The files that reopen America's deepest questions, exposing networks of power that spanned continents, drawing Trump and other global names back into focus. As new disclosures test institutions and allies alike, this is the full story behind the Epstein files.